On this episode, we visit Red Mountain Park in Birmingham, Alabama. Then we talk with Michael Ronkin about the importance of destinations for pedestrians. Stay tuned. We're in Birmingham, Alabama, talking with David Dionne, who's Executive Director of Red Mountain Park. What is Red Mountain Park?
Well, John, Red Mountain Park is a 1,200-acre park. It's located within the urban footprint of the city of Birmingham, Alabama. It's the old mining sites for U.S. Steel. Birmingham was originally founded as a steel town, and it's an industrial city, and this is the property where a lot of the iron ore came out of the mountain.
Okay. What's this piece of machinery behind us here?
This is called a lifting or a hoisting engine. It actually had a big cable that wrapped around it, and there's a shaft mine just outside the window behind us, and that cable went down into the shaft mine, dropped down about 500 feet, and it lifted men and material out of the ground.
How many different types of mines did they have here? They weren't all shaft mines, were they?
No, they weren't. Red Mountain had actually 4 different kinds of mines. Originally, they open pit or strip mined the top of the mountain, and they got the iron ore that was very easy to access. When the open pit was finished, they would drift mine into the mountain. They'd kind of follow little cracks of iron ore down into the ground. But that turned out to be very, very dangerous. And they developed some mining technique. One was called slope mining, where they'd actually burrow into the iron ore slope. It was 30 feet high, and they would go down the slope. It dropped about 30 degrees down into the ground. And they follow it all the way to the other side of the valley, the Oxmoor Valley, to South Shades Crest Mountain. And then the last type of mining, so they had open pit or strip mining, they had drift mining, they had slope mining, and then the shaft mining, where they would go straight down and intersect that belt of iron ore and then lift things straight up and down out of the ground.
So what time period were these mines active?
Mining here on the mountain started in 1863 and ended in 1971. That's 108 years. And during that time, they took 305 million tons of iron ore out of Red Mountain. That works out, if you do the math, to 10,700 pounds of iron ore every 60 seconds on average over that 108 years.
What happened to this property after the mines closed down?
The mines here shut down in the 1960s, and basically U.S. Steel, who was the owner and the operator then, went through and they knocked down some of the old mining buildings because of the liability problems and their age and their condition. This building happened to stand because it was surrounded by privet and kudzu, and they couldn't get to it. But basically the property was abandoned for the next 50 years, and it sort of fell out of the community's memory. It's right here within the city. It's part of the mountain system that kind of backdrops the city of Birmingham, but nobody came back up here. And this mountain, which 100 years ago was completely stripped of trees, today it's got a mature canopy on it. It's got all kinds of wildlife here. It's a perfect place to build a park.
Okay, it's an unusual opportunity to have a large, brand new park like this, right in, close in an urban center. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to put here?
Well, we're going to take all the old railroads and turn them into multi-use trails. We're going to put in a 22-acre lake. We're going to have, of course, historic interpretation on the old mining slopes and talk about not only the technology of mining and the types of mining, but we'll talk about mining culture, what it was like to live in the mining camps and be a miner or a camp kid that grew up in this mining industry. And we're going to have picnic areas, of course, things like that, but we'll also have high adventure stuff, zip lines and ropes courses and off-leash dog parks. We're going to build an NCAA championship grade cross-country course on the great big lawn that we'll build here in the park called Reading Commons so that we can host the NCAA championships here. We're going to have all kinds of activities, concerts and things that'll just turn this park into almost the heart of Birmingham, the place where everyone wants to bring their out-of-town guests, and the place where you come for culture, you come to meet your neighbors face to face. It's going to be the place everyone wants to be.
How long have you been working on it, and how long is it going to take to put that vision into place?
I've been here for 2 years now. I left Maryland a couple of years ago, and it's almost my 2-year anniversary. We will open this park in 2 years, in 2012. But I think the park will continue to evolve over probably the next decade as we acquire additional lands and we're able to push down the mountain And as we build sort of the infrastructure here on the southwest part of the city that will really turn this portion of Birmingham into a major tourist attraction.
And with the mines and the steel industry, you had all kinds of rail lines running everywhere. What sort of opportunities does that give you?
Well, it gives the city a fantastic opportunity. I'm working with them, just like I did in Maryland and I did on the East Coast Greenway, working with the city of Birmingham and with several of our important partners to take a lot of those old industrial railroad lines, because Birmingham, John, was filled with coke ovens and byproducts plants and furnaces and all that centered around this huge iron ore industry. A lot of those rail lines and those connector lines are now abandoned, and we can turn them into a fantastic greenway system for the city. Connect every neighborhood, every small town in Jefferson County can all have their 1 mile of the railroad line here, and that's what we're calling the project, our 1 mile, getting every little town to build their 1 mile of it and connect the whole system together. Red Mountain Park will become a hub for that system, just like in the ancient world they used to say all roads led to Rome. Well, in Birmingham, all trails will lead to Red Mountain.
And you talked a bit about sort of the history of the people in the mines. Are there people here who still remember the mines or worked in the mines?
One of the programs, yes, there are. One of the programs that we're working on is our oral history program. We have located several dozen men who are now in their 80s and 90s who were miners here on the mountain. And we are going and videotaping them and interviewing them and going through old family photographs and artifacts that they remember, carrying them up here on the mountain to show them the site. They're telling us their stories, and their stories are now becoming our stories, so that their grandchildren can understand what an amazing impact Red Mountain had, not only in the city of Birmingham, but on the United States of America. This mountain won 2 world wars because the iron here was so important to both the First and Second World Wars. Sharing those stories is incredibly important, and it helps us to tell the story and the complete history of the city of Birmingham.
And when you go out and talk with civic groups in the city, about the mountain, what you're going to be doing here and the history here, how much do people know about all that before you get to them and tell them about your plans?
Well, if they're historians, they know bits and pieces of it. They know maybe 1 or 2 sections of it. Here at Red Mountain, we're able to tell the whole story. But it's amazing the number of people who've forgotten that history of what created the city of Birmingham. And so when I talk about mining on Red Mountain, they think I'm talking about coal mining, which happened in this region but didn't happen here. Red Mountain is Red Mountain because of the iron ore that's in this mountain. So we're retelling people stories and histories that have fallen out of, I think, the current generation's memory. These are old stories, and we're reminding them of what a terrific past they have here in Birmingham and what kind of amazing things that happened here. And even some of the people whose fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers were the founders of these mining companies and really did a lot to found this city, even they've forgotten that history. And it's pretty amazing how we're able to bring that whole story out. And people, we're hosting hikes here on the mountain to show people what we're going to build and how we're going to operate the park. We started off a couple of years ago with 25 people on a Sunday afternoon. It's now up to 250 people, and we're running 4 and 5 different hikes on the same day. People are really excited about this park, really excited to learn all of the history of Birmingham, really excited to see what's coming, and they are getting behind this project in a big, big way.
What does it take to put together a project like this? Where's the manpower come from? Where's the money come from? And how did it all get started in the first place?
That's a great question. It actually started with a guy named Irvin Battain, who wanted people to know the history, and he started little hikes on the mountain himself. He's now one of our commissioners. That vision that Irvin had when it went to the Freshwater Land Trust, and a lady named Wendy Jackson realized that there was a huge opportunity here to build a mega park for the city of Birmingham. U.S. Steel then became one of the major benefactors because they had property they really couldn't use for any other type of development, and they realized this is a great park. So they sold the property to a commission that was formed by the governor to create Red Mountain Park, and But what it really took was vision from the community, energy from the community. We have an active Friends organization. We have the legislation now that creates the organization that can own this property and build the park. We have a great design. They were very, very smart and not just looking around and saying kind of haphazardly, let's build a park. They stepped back and they went through an entire design concept and plan. We're in engineering and permitting now, taking the ideas that the landscape architects and the designers put together, and we're turning them into engineering drawings and getting the permits that we need to be able to construct the park. And then next year we'll start on our construction. And so it really took an entire community. It took people with vision. It will take people with resources. Birmingham, by the way, the most generous philanthropic giving city in the United States, it's going to take those corporations. It's going to take the community foundations and the private family foundations all to contribute money to this process. And once we have, we've got everything lined up, when we open this park, people are going to be astounded at what they find here. This is going to change the perception of the city of Birmingham, not only for people on the outside, but people on the inside. People here in Birmingham have needed a park like this for quite a while because, here in Alabama we have obesity and heart disease and diabetes, but I think the people in Alabama really need a place where they can meet face to face, a place where they can really show Southern hospitality. And what a great region this is in the country. I lived in the north for a long, long time. I've been down here in the south for just 2 years. I'll never go back north. I love it here in the south.
We're talking with Michael Ronkin. I first interviewed you on the program over a dozen years ago.
1997, yes.
How have things changed since then?
Well, it was a hot summer day in Washington, D.C., so that's stayed the same. I think I'll talk first about things that stayed the same. You posted it on your website, and you brought our attention to it, so I figured, okay, I'll take a look at it, see if I won't embarrass myself too much. And it was pretty amazing to look at it and say, to myself, if I never knew this guy, I'd think he was fairly intelligent, had some good things to say, and I'd agree with pretty much everything that he said. And the point I'm trying to make here without being vain is that there are certain truths about the world of transportation and non-motorized walking, bicycling forms of transportation that are universal and just haven't changed. And we're still pushing the same agenda. We're being successful in many places, there's no doubt about that. A lot of the changes that were recommended are occurring. So the good news is there's some universal truths that haven't changed. And another blast from the past incident is when I was in Washington in June at a conference sponsored by AARP. I was a panel and I spoke for about 20 minutes and I was the last speaker. So of course it's questions and answers, and a certain John Wetmore, whom I hadn't seen come in, stands up from the back of the room and starts by saying, "Michael, I remember you saying something many, many years ago," and you start quoting me. It's another one of those, oh my gosh, A, what did I say? And B, this guy actually remembered something that I said. What you said was still true that many years later. What you said was that I had said that there are 3 things you need to do to make the world better for people walking. That's give them a place to walk along a road, give them a way to cross the street, and give them interesting destinations along the street so there's actually someplace worthwhile walking to. And that hasn't changed either in 12 years. So I think the basic premise that we need to change the built environment to create better conditions for people not in cars, that is still my basic philosophy, and the major ways that we get there haven't changed that much, I would say.
So we've known then quite a while what needs to be done.
Right.
But you say we're making a little progress getting it done now?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. As I look outside, I see a street that's got virtually all the elements that we've been asking for the last 20, 30 years. I see sidewalks, I see bike lanes, I see moderate-sized travel lanes, I see good striping, good markings, and except for the few people leaving and entering the convention, I see absolutely no one walking, absolutely no one bicycling, because it is such a sterile environment. So I've been in this convention hall for about 3 days now, and one day I decided to take a walk, and I walked away from downtown, about 45 minutes an hour in all. And the streets all had sidewalks. It's actually pretty good connectivity. The traffic volumes are pretty moderate, which means you could bicycle on these streets. And I saw absolutely no one bicycling, absolutely no one walking, because there's absolutely no reason to be walking or bicycling, because it is such a dead, sterile environment. And I think that's probably the thing that has changed the most in my way of thinking as far as transportation goes, is it is not about the journey, it's not about the streets, it is about the destinations. And what matters more, or most I should say, is what's happening on each side of the street. I always joke with people when we talk about interesting places to go to, really walkable cities, and the usual list of suspects comes up. It's the United States, it's San Francisco, it's New York, it's Chicago, it's Philadelphia, it's New Orleans, it's, excuse me if I left out your beautiful city. And if it's the world, of course, it's Rome, it's Paris, it's London, it's Geneva, my hometown. And then I ask them, when you were walking, did you spend much time looking under your feet at the quality of the sidewalks? Did you look on the streets to see how the traffic lanes were striped? Of course not. They're looking at the parks, they're looking at the buildings, they're looking at the people. That's truly what creates a great place to walk and to bicycle to a certain extent too.
So when you're thinking about walking, we're thinking about the Department of Transportation that controls the sidewalks and the crosswalks in the street. We're completely leaving out, everything outside the right of way, the buildings and the parks, and the stuff you're saying is what's really important for making a walkable place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I am part of the Complete Streets Coalition. I'm one of the instructors. And one of the criticisms that's leveled at us fairly often is that we do leave out that side of the equation. And this was an internal discussion that we had among ourselves. And I was for pushing the envelope. In this case, this expression is almost literal. Pushing the envelope to go beyond the roadway, blur the line, look at what's going on beyond the right-of-way line. And the pushback that I got, and I understand it better now and I can articulate it myself, is DOTs have no control over that, or Public Works also. There's no doubt that cities that have a better integrated planning, land use, and transportation department can do more to blur those lines. But since Complete Streets is trying to stay focused on what happens within the right-of-way, that's what we're doing. But the expression that I just brought up is one that I'd like to start using more too, and that's blurring the lines. Literally, when we work on plans and projects, we draw lines on paper, and a line that's almost a line that you cannot cross is the right-of-way line, for example. And there's a Spanish architect who moved to America when he was a teenager or so, Ramon Trias, who taught me this, and that is, it's interesting that America is a country that likes to think of itself a place that does not have too many regulations, but we actually have far more rules and regulations than many places, and they prevent us from doing good things. And one of the major obstacles is that very solid line at the right-of-way. We cannot blur that line, we cannot create fuzzy edges that create more interesting streets.
In the current administration, they have Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, and the Environmental Protection Agency all sort of talking to each other about livable communities. Do you think that might be able to crack that nut?
I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Of course, we're still talking about agencies, so one form or another of government that deal with the public realm. Of course, housing does go beyond the public realm. But this afternoon, one of the sessions I went to was about Complete Streets, and Linda Tracy had a very good, very long laundry list of 20 bullets or so of different groups with whom one should seek alliances. And it really struck me, all of those groups, one way or the other, were either government or public entity related. The only one that wasn't government was realtors. And since we are a country that takes private property so seriously, it seems to me that realtors are the ones we really need to start reaching out to, because they're the ones that, I don't want to say own or control, but that literally deal with the private side of the equation, the public right-of-way, private property, and how can we help bring them in to understand that private property owners have such an important role to play in creating better streets and better destinations.
Private property owners, oftentimes they're just worried about the bottom line. What's in it for them? Why should realtors care if their properties are helping create a walkable environment?
Sure. It's interesting that there is no doubt that throughout the 19th century and the bulk of the 20th century, transportation has brought prosperity. You think of the railroads and the telegraph in the 19th century and highways in the 20th century. It has brought tremendous prosperity to the West. There's no doubt about that. The highway system was pretty much built out by 1960. We're celebrating the fact that the very last segment of the interstate freeway was opened, like 15 years ago, but basically it was completed by 1950 or 1960 or two. Or so. The railroad system was completed almost 100 years earlier, right? So the prosperity that highways and railroads and canals and other forms of moving goods and people over long distances kind of maximizes or tops out at a certain point where there's no more goods to be brought. There's no more need to bring more goods to isolated places because that's in place. It's done. So what we need to be looking at now is more qualitative. We've got the quantity. How about the quality? And there's absolutely no doubt that the kind of places where people want to live, want to go to, want to play, and dare I say shop, which is the most obvious way that people spend money, are places that are of interest. And more and more we're hearing from people that as you look around the built environment, we do a fantastic job on the inside. Quite a few people have commented that this is probably the best convention center, the best laid out that they've ever been to. And I agree with that. I usually hate convention centers, and this one is really quite impressive. So a lot of us are starting to ask ourselves, how come we don't get these people to design our streets for us? I once saw a television show on casinos and supermarkets, how both of them are designed with human factors in mind, and the whole idea is to get customers to feel comfortable and to feel at ease and to start spending money, of course. But what's so fascinating about the program is they talk about so many of the things that we talk about as far as street design goes, and they understand it. And why don't we don't understand that? Traffic engineers, even landscape architects and others don't understand the human factors of what makes a street a pleasant or unpleasant experience to be on.
Back to the view across the railing here out on the street. What's out there that just isn't working?
I want to start with what is working. Like I said, the street is actually fairly well done. It's only got one travel lane in each direction. The lanes aren't too wide. It's got well-marked bike lanes. It's got good sidewalks. The sidewalks have trees. I do see two people walking, and it does not look like they're conventioneers. They don't have name tags, but they are walking to the hotel. So between the right-of-way, they got it right. You look beyond the right-of-way, the first thing that you see is a chain link fence about 5 feet high. So for most people, it comes to between their chin and their nose. Then you got a parking lot. It's masked a little bit with some trees, a little bit of greenery, but it's still not enough to mask the fact that it's just a wasteland. Beyond that, you've got a 1960s style one-story building that's some kind of an office, maybe a dental, real estate, service industry kind of office, and that's it. I'm now staying in the Marriott, about the 12th floor or so, and you look out and you see a lot of trees, you see a few buildings sticking up, and absolutely nothing else. You don't see any evidence of life on the streets, places that would be interesting to go to on foot or on bicycle.
And countries where they have lively pedestrian environments, but they don't have the same rules we do on, what are the rules that they don't have that we do have that might be an obstacle to all this happening here?
Well, first of all, we have to preface it by saying that, let's just be honest and say we're talking about Europe primarily. It is, of course, a lot older, and the cities have grown organically over the centuries, and the parts of the cities that we love, of course, were shaped before the automobile. Of course, there were wheeled vehicles that had to go down those streets, so they had to take that into account, horse-drawn carriages. But number one, of course, is the dimension and the scale. It's interesting that when people think of Paris and the wide boulevards, once you get to Paris, you walk down those boulevards maybe 20, 30 minutes, and okay, been there, done that, and the real interest is in the skinny streets. People love the Quartier Latin and the Marais because that's where the very narrow, twisty, windy streets are. All of the towns in Europe that are really interesting, what really grabs your attention are the narrower streets. So I'd say the number one thing is the narrower the street, the greater the interest, because the closer you're going to be to what's really of interest, which are the buildings and the people that come in and out of the buildings. You mentioned parks. All you need is every once in a while a small pocket park. You don't need a big central park. every once in a while, a little bit of greenery, a little bit of a fountain. For example, I remember we visited Nîmes in France for the first time, a very well-known city founded by the Romans, and they do have a spectacular park, very, very large park, and that's good for a visit in and of itself, but after that, when you're walking around Nîmes, what really catches your attention are the very, very narrow streets and the life on those streets. So I would say that's the first rule, keep your streets narrow. And again, blurring the line between the public and the private realm and blurring the lines on the streets themselves. We're seeing more and more shared streets, for example, everything at the same elevation, some definition if it's needed, like for on-street parking and things like that. More use of bollards than we care to see here. That is true, because sometimes you do have to make sure that the wrong user does not get on those kinds of streets. One very interesting trend that I started observing, and Peter Lagaway confirmed this, is reversing the drainage. Traditionally, drainage used to be to the center of the street for millennia, and it's somewhere around the 18th century or so that they reversed the drainage, crowned streets with water draining to both sides, and that's where curbs started appearing, so the drainage wouldn't enter the buildings. And then somewhere in the mid to late 19th century, 20th century, those curbs got widened and became sidewalks. So I don't know if you know this little piece of trivia as far as sidewalk history. Sidewalks are basically drainage, and we're walking on curbs that were originally intended for drainage. And it's a new trend now, and Switzerland is doing this through nearly all of its villages and small streets. They're going back to drainage in the middle, which of course is more efficient from a cost point of view. You don't have to provide as much drainage. It also kind of forces traffic a little bit more towards the middle, because now the road is sloping towards the middle. And I would say one fundamental change that I would like to see people adopt in their roadway design is do everything you can to bring traffic away from the edges of the road. The edges really are where the activities are, and that's not where you want cars. Everyone knows I'm a very, very strong supporter of bike lanes, and even though their primary function, of course, is to provide a space on the roadway where bicyclists can operate at a speed that's comfortable for them, another secondary reason that I would, in my opinion, is as important is to move traffic away from the sidewalks. So it gets back to that blurring the lines a little bit, even though a bike lane, of course, is a line, is what can we do to keep traffic contained more in the center of the roadway and then really start developing the edges in an interesting way.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.